We're going to start today's meeting with a conversation with Mo Islam from Threshold Ventures. Welcome, Mo. I don't think you've been here before. I believe Heidi connected us, yes?
Yeah, that's right. I think my partner Heidi knows you. She's been with the firm a long time, worked closely with her, and she runs our. I'll make a quick pitch for her startup podcast, which everybody should go listen to because it's fantastic.
So, Mo, give us a little bit of an overview on, your path to venture capital and set some context about Threshold Ventures. Of course, Heidi has been here, but then I want to focus most of our discussion today on your firm's AI investment strategy.
Sure. So happy to give you some of the context. So and thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys putting this together, especially for all the founders. A really cool mission in terms of being able to democratize access to this type of information. So I like you said, I'm a partner at Threshold Ventures. I've been with the team since sort of the inception of the firm, and was involved with the predecessor as well, DFJ, where I started my venture career. And so worked there for a number of years. I tend to focus on our AI infrastructure, frontier tech investments. And then before becoming a VC, I was actually an engineer and technical staff member. So worked at InQtel, which, if you can believe it or not, the CIA had a strategic investment arm that was involved with funding startups so that the intelligence community and defense in the U.S., the defense industry, could get access to the latest and greatest technology. So I was there as a technical staff member for a number of years, and then started my career as an engineer, electrical by training. So came from more of a technical background before joining VC, and so I tend to gravitate towards companies that I think are building unique technology, have novel IP. And then, a lot of what we help with is helping take that to market and build a real business around it. So, I've backed everything from like drug discovery companies to AI-enabled applications to hardware companies even that are building down to the chip level. So it's been pretty broad in terms of areas of focus, but what I would say is we tend to be very early stage investors. So seed, Series A, Series B is generally where we play. So like to be involved with companies pretty soon after they've kind of built their initial product, and like I said, we kind of help think through how to take that to market, help scale it up into a real business. So it's been exciting. The firm has backed a number of fantastic companies over the years. In the DFJ days, it was SpaceX, Tesla, Box. With Threshold, companies like BetterUp, LaunchDarkly, Twilio, Livongo. So have invested across a number of different sectors and multi-billion-dollar companies, which has been really exciting. And we're in the age of AI now, so like we're in this new super cycle, which is really, really exciting. I'm very.
Let's start,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let's start with how you are thinking about AI. Just give me a kind of like what is your mind map of how you are processing the AI, age of AI, and where are the opportunities that you are particularly interested in?
Sure. Yeah. And, I would say, we think about AI as, sort of this new enabling technology, right? We've actually been investing in AI for quite some time, or you can think of deep learning sort of emerging back in 2012, right? And so there, everybody's very excited about generative AI, today, but there are analytical forms of AI that had created pretty phenomenal companies, even over the last, 10, 12 years, where we've already started to see real market value from. And so we have everything from like medical imaging diagnostics, to drug discovery, that were formed with those companies. So the thing that's exciting to us now, though, is like AI is presenting this new kind of platform shift, right? We like past platform shifts like mobile and the internet were pretty phenomenal in terms of like value creation, right? In terms of the types of businesses that were built on top of those platforms. We think AI is one of those new platform shifts now, especially with respect to generative AI, which we've seen over the last like several years. So our mind map is hey, we're in this like new platform, which you can build phenomenal businesses around, and so let's go find those, right? So I mean, we already have some of the early massive companies that are the LLM providers here, or that application level companies can be built on. So, obviously OpenAI, Anthropic, we're seeing a lot in open source as well. So at a high level, there's a number of big platforms now that have emerged within this overall AI platform shift. And where we're spending a lot of time now is at the application layer. So looking at companies that are built on top of those LLMs to provide real business value.
So let's double click down on drug discovery. It's something that I've been spending time on as well. What have you invested in, and how are you thinking about drug discovery, AI-enabled drug discovery? What are the criteria of what you want to invest in, and what have you invested in?
So we have a couple companies in our portfolio. Atomwise, which is working on, was one of the earlier companies that were leveraging deep learning for, sort of matching small molecules to their various targets. So it has a deep learning based approach to basically drug discovery. And so that was an early company we invested in. Verge Genomics is another one that's focused on neurodegenerative diseases. And that's both of these companies are AI platforms, and so not focused on any one. When you look at a lot of drug discovery companies, usually they have like a single asset, single small molecule, or perhaps biologic that the company is really kind of betting on. Where we tend to look has been more AI-enabled platform companies that could have multiple assets that they could potentially take to market. Because as the probabilities that you sort of get to an actual drug with any one of these predicted assets is very, very low, right? The probability of failure is high with any one asset, and so having this kind of AI platform that can help you predict, basically to take multiple shots on goal is pretty phenomenal. So that's been.
Let me ask you a question on that one. So Atomwise is a go-to-market strategy as a platform, as a service on which other people are going to do drug discovery, or is this company doing drug discovery itself?
So they're essentially partnering with a number of different biotechs and pharma companies where they would provide that drug discovery engine, and then those companies would take that.
Biology is being provided by the farmers and the biotechs.
Yeah, those folks would kind of take that technology platform and then advance like assets. Like let's say you have a small molecule that is showing good early signs of having efficacy. They would then be able to take that and then start to move into things like animal models, and then eventually like other in vivo studies into humans. So they would kind of take that forward. Verge actually is doing a lot of that themselves. So they're keeping, at least for a couple of their programs, they are keeping it in-house, and they are kind of taking that program all the way through. So different go-to-market strategies for different companies in our portfolio. But I would say largely the thesis has been around backing these AI platforms, especially in areas where there's like unmet needs. Atomwise has a number of different programs now that they're working on. Verge and neurodegenerative, like Alzheimer's, ALS, very, very tough area, and a lot of unmet need. And so that they've got kind of a unique approach using human data that we thought was interesting, hence why we backed them. So I would say platforms within drug discovery have been a big part of the thesis. But different go-to-market strategies can actually work in terms of getting those drugs to market. But ultimately, it's about, that's the long-term goal, right? Can you discover something within the platform and either partner with a biotech or pharma, or if you're going to take the risk yourself, raise enough capital to be able to do that with a particular program and take it to market. But it's a 10 to 15 year journey, so it is a long.
I was about to ask you, where in the cycle of drug discovery are let's say you take Atomwise, the customers of Atomwise using that platform, how far along are they? Is anything, getting close to getting through some, maybe stage 1 clinical trial, or where are we in this evolution?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you for Verge, they're in phase one now with one of their programs, so they've actually made it quite far. With Atomwise, it's somewhat dependent on some of their partners and how far they've taken it. So that that's kind of still in process. I would say largely preclinical for where they are today, but we see kind of promise in terms of where they can go. So but it is a long process. Like, drug discovery is like this like marathon sort of process. And so it can take quite a while, but that's what we would be looking for in terms of, some of these companies, eventually getting to market. The nice thing with drug discovery though is that you can get upfront payments like along the way. So that's been used to like capitalize some of these businesses. Like, oftentimes the model will be upfront payments, then milestone-based payments, and then eventually royalties that come with actually getting the drug. But even way before that, there's ways to capitalize the business, just making progress on in the overall process.
And who is paying those upfront payments? The pharmaceutical companies to Atomwise? Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking
Correct. Yeah, exactly. It's the pharma companies and the biotechs that they're working with would because pharma has been outsourcing R&D to smaller biotech companies
for a long time?
For a long time, right? So
The
for them,
platform is technology. They're buying technology. Obviously, they have to pay upfront. They don't have to wait for the drug to be successful for that to be
exactly.
payment worthy.
Exactly. So that is why they're willing to do it, right? Because if someone has a more novel approach that could get that process could make it faster, right? Like the kind of marathon process, that's worth risking millions, tens of millions of dollars, because the prize at the end could be worth billions.
But in the case of the Verge model, or let's say you have a startup that works on the Atomwise platform, is trying to do their own drug, that's more on that 10-year, 15-year time scale, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would say for even for these AI platform companies like Atomwise and Verge, ultimately the goal is to get a drug in market that's been discovered from their platform, right? And so like ultimately that's what like long-term success looks like. Both those businesses are doing pretty well just based on the progress that they've already made, but long term it's about getting a drug to market.
Could you talk a little bit about the financing journey of a company that has a 10 to 15-year life cycle? And the reason, let me set this in context. The world that we have lived in for the last, let's say 30 years, a little bit more than 30 years perhaps, is that VCs want to go from 0 to $100 million in 5 to 7 years. That is the unicorn trajectory, so to speak. But now if we're looking at 10 to 15-year timelines, how do we address that from a venture structure point of view, limited partner expectations point of view, and so forth? Are we now talking about splitting it up, like in biotech, for instance? Companies get acquired after stage 1 clinical trials. Companies get acquired after stage 2 clinical trials. They don't necessarily stay within the same frame, same corporate structure for the entire journey, right? As you said, large pharma companies constantly outsource R&D to small companies and then acquire, bring them in, and do the maybe phase 2, phase 3 within the large company structure. Is that what we are looking to see in the cycle of the AI-enabled drug discovery companies like Verge?
Potentially. I mean, I would say with some of these companies, like like you said, like once you're in clinic, there's paths to potentially public markets, right? Or you could kind of spin off an individual asset into its own company and take that public, which we have seen kind of folks do. More broadly within venture, I would say, I think there has been a realization that the 5 to 7 year path to liquidity is probably gone, because we don't see that anymore. We do see more like a 10-year plus.
Not 5 to 7 years to liquidity so much as 5 to 7 years to 100 million in revenue, and that fast clip growth, so that you have enough valuation to do the rest of, even if you're doing the rest of the journey. People can come in at later stages, but you have You have
Oh yeah, yeah. But I would say, the five, in some cases we're actually seeing the 100 million revenue be less than 5 to 7 years, just because it's been, especially with an AI, some of these companies, the growth has been explosive. But with respect to like a venture fund, right? They're typically like 10-year funds, and LPs have a sort of expectation of liquidity within that, that kind of timeline. That has been, that's what's changed quite a bit. Like that, because even 100 million of ARR, that used to be the barometer where you could think about going public. That's gone now. The bar is much, much higher. Hence why we're not seeing a lot of companies go after public markets.
Yeah, one of the things we are seeing though is the earlier stage companies exiting into later rounds of financing. That's one of the ways people are bridging that longer cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the desire to have that fast growth, high velocity growth has remained.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah. I
it
mean, look
doesn't necessarily apply exactly the way it applies in software to drug discovery. I think your Atomwise business it follows the cycle of a software business, so that can get that to that kind of velocity in that kind of time frame. Verge, I think, is on a different model.
It is, yeah. Well, I would say that, there's both of them have actually a mix of tech and biotech investors, which I think has been sort of helpful to kind of guide some of the direction that they could go in terms of, capital, future kind of capital financings. For Atomwise, it is very dependent on like, where their partners will take these assets, because it is more of like a tech platform play, where Verge is more of actual biotech, like an AI-enabled biotech, and they have a path to, potentially public markets, depending on how their asset performs in the clinic. And so, slightly different in terms of those two companies, but I would say broadly within drug discovery, once you do have something in clinic, that does open up the opportunity to look at public markets, because there are public market biotech investors who know how to value those assets. Like it may be a pre-revenue company still, but you have like very positive clinical data which can be used, to kind of underwrite that company in a public market setting. For software and other sort of areas, I would say yes, that's more of the traditional, like, need to get to what used to be like I said, 100 million of ARR, now more like 200 or 250 before you're considering going public, and that bar has gone up and made it a lot harder in those sectors. But we're also, I would say, we just had our annual meeting with our LPs not too long ago, and there's some optimism, over the next 4 years where things may start to open up, just based on more friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to the business community. Sorry, go ahead.
What is the situation vis-a-vis startup biotech companies that want to use a platform like Atomwise? Is Atomwise seeing startup biotech companies built on their platform?
I don't think it's been as much startups per se. I mean, there are some other companies that want startups to kind of build on top of them, but I think their approach has been more going after
the large pharma.
Pharma, and then like more mature biotechs, if you will. We have seen some companies in the past that have catered more to startups or a variety of different things, not just drug discovery, but also like fermentation, sort of as people who are kind of growing microbes and things like that for various use cases. So we've seen a lot of those over the years, but haven't necessarily seen that kind of scale up quite yet. But not to say that opportunity can't be there.
Is Verge built on Atomwise?
Sorry, say again.
Is Verge built on Atomwise?
No, totally separate platforms. Just because they're kind of Verge was like very vertically integrated. That was something we were excited about that they were doing, and had novel access to data, like human data especially, and so that was a big part of our bet. Because when we think about like vertical applications of AI, where we've actually been spending a lot of time. One of the things that we look for outside of just, a model that the company may have is the data that's used to train that model, right? And in healthcare and drug discovery, life sciences, access to novel data can make a big difference, right? Because it's a little bit different from scraping the entire internet to get, all the text, video, audio data that's out there. Usually, when you think about things like whether it's imagery or genomic data or drug discovery data, that's not usually publicly available, at least not to large degrees. And so, like actually having novel access to data has been a big differentiator for some of these companies, both on the drug discovery side, but also like medical imaging diagnostics, like our companies Imagen and Viz AI all started with like novel sort of data sets that they had gotten access to. So that's made a big difference in terms of long-term defensibility.
So I'm going to ask you more about medical imaging in just a moment, but I want to provide a little bit of a synthesis for people who are listening. If you are thinking about working in AI-enabled drug discovery as a startup, and your primary unfair advantage, as we call it, is on the biology side. You understand biology, you are coming in from coming into startups from the world of biology or medicine, or, where there is unique data, where there is unique knowledge of a process, a drug discovery process, or you're coming from inside of pharmaceutical companies and you have some new idea. You kind of have to find a platform to work on. It is very, very difficult and expensive to build the entire platform yourself. So I think this discussion of the contrast between the strategy of Verge and the strategy of the platform company, Atomwise, are interesting in that context. Is that if you're not coming from the technology software kind of background, and you're trying to build more a drug discovery company based on your knowledge of biology, you do need to access software somehow. And this kind of softwares are very, very expensive to build. So platform as a service is going to emerge as an interesting model, and it's something that you need to keep an eye on and look for a platform on which you can apply your biology knowledge. Do you want to comment on what I just said, Mo?
No, I think that's very, very fair, and I would say we've actually, there's been a number of new companies that have emerged because we've largely not gone after, at least for our particular fund, because we're an early stage focused fund. We haven't chased the big LLM companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Cohere, but where we actually have found like interesting opportunities at the foundation model layer has been companies that are building vertical specific foundation model layers, and so there are some new ones that are emerging working on drug discovery. Like there's Chai Discovery, which you might know about as well. That's like finding, predicting and reprogramming the interactions between like different biochemical molecules. And so there's some of these new ones that are emerging. Even like I'd say Atomwise was from the last like 5 to 10 years. There's some new ones that are emerging now that we're not investors in yet, but we're actively looking at that could actually be interesting, perhaps more for startups to build upon, like you were saying, that could actually give you a pretty significant leg up. And then there's been pretty phenomenal, like even if you see what the bigger companies have shared publicly, like Google DeepMind with AlphaFold is pretty, if you're working in like protein design, for example, right? It's actually pretty phenomenal what open source tools are available now for free. Like Demis was at TED a couple of years ago, I think, when I was there, and was he made the claim that almost like every biologist in the world that was working in an applicable area is using AlphaFold, which is pretty amazing. So I think there's actually more. I think the great thing for entrepreneurs and people like building in this area now is the tool set that's available so much better than it was like 10 years ago, and so I think gives entrepreneurs a big leg up.
And so let's as the final discussion, we're getting to the close of the time that we've
Oh, yeah.
is medical imaging. What have you been up to on that, and what are you learning? What insights can we convey here?
Yeah, I mean, we've we backed a number of companies here. Imogen as one that's working on medical imaging diagnostics, have multiple FDA approved devices now. Viz is another that was working on AI powered like stroke detection and kind of in the clinical workflow. So I would say with with those companies, the point I was making earlier around getting access to novel data sets in the these companies are more mature now, but like in the very early days, because I imagine the entrepreneurs you're speaking to are fairly early in their journey. Getting access to novel data, like Imogen, it was the hospital for special surgery in New York. That's where they kind of spun out of and got access to a novel data set to help build their initial models, which then they kind of were able to get FDA approval on. So these are like class 2 medical devices. That was pretty important in their journey. And so I would say for people working in medical imaging diagnostics, the models now are pretty amazing in terms of what's available publicly. Like, you can go to Hugging Face and download some pretty, good general purpose models, perhaps even imagery focused, but not fine tuned yet to medical imagery. And then if you have access to this data, you can actually build something that's pretty novel, whether it's, detecting, cancer in X-rays or MRIs to, stroke detection like Viz is doing. So I think there's a lot on the model side that's now just like open source and very, very powerful. But getting access to proprietary data, I think, is the big differentiator.
So, but this kind of companies has to go through FDA approval, right?
It depends on what you're doing. In these cases, they have because it's clinical decision support. So they are, actively providing a radiologist or physician, information around making a diagnosis, and so then it becomes critical to get FDA approval before you can actually start selling the product. But there are other companies that may be doing, different things where you don't necessarily need FDA approval, maybe more in a R&D sort of setting. And we've seen companies go down that path. But for these companies, and where we think there is actually quite a bit of value long term and defensibility, is if you can go down that path to becoming an FDA approved device.
What is the timeline of the FDA approval?
It depends on how mature of a team and how well they know the process. But for 510(k), usually it can be like kind of 6 to 9 months, like from an initial submission. But usually there's some back and forth in that process. So it just sort of depends, what your device is, if they're predicate devices that exist already, or it's de novo. But it largely kind of depends on, kind of what exactly you're doing and how well the team is knowledgeable about like that sort of process. Like a lot of our companies have used FDA sort of advisors to kind of help them through that process, and it's been successful for them.
So there is more knowledge of how to go through that process developing in the venture capital ecosystem now. The biotech world has always known how to do this, but this is coming out of the software investment world, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say, a lot of us invest in healthcare companies, which, technically these are both like software companies in the sense that, largely the product they're building is software, but it's regulated like a medical device. So you got to have that expertise, or at least have the network that can give you that expertise. And so that's something we've built up over time. And then also have other co-investors and partners that help the company with that. So it's in a lot of these companies, it's been helpful to have a mix of sort of dedicated healthcare and tech investors that could, I would encourage any founder, it's definitely in life sciences, but I would say also in other areas of healthcare, having a mix of different investors that can bring different expertise and networks to the table.
Mo, it's been fascinating, and we should continue the conversation in the future. It was a pleasure
For
meeting you.
sure.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun. Thanks for putting this all together. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Folks,